Hey, everybody. Glad you guys can make it. Okay, so first things first, we're going to talk about what is meditation, just that kind of baseline, because this might be your first time, right? And you never meditated before. So we're going to go over what is meditation, why does it work, how do we do it, all those wonderful things. And then we're going to dive into a little bit deeper look at breathing meditation, different types of breathing meditation that we can do. So that's our plan for today. And please do ask questions. So at any time, you can literally interrupt me by just typing in chat, and I will stop what I'm doing and I'll answer your question. That is what this format really excels at, like the live format. Because a lot of meditation is pre-recorded video. You can't ask a question to a pre-recorded video. I guess you could, but you wouldn't really get a response. So I promise to respond to the best of my ability. So if you do have questions, please do put them in chat. I will put my email in chat, and I'll say it later. That way you guys can email me at any time if anything comes up when you're practicing this at home. Okay, I think that's it. Got all that out of the way, right? All right, so let's get started. What is meditation, right? So a lot of us want to meditate to relax, right? That's kind of the entry point into meditation, right? Good, it can do that for you, right? But meditation doesn't create relaxation, right? It's not like it's just pulling relaxation from thin air or something like that, right? That relaxation, that peacefulness is in you. And meditation helps you access it, right? And the way that meditation helps you access it is by training your mind to become familiar with peacefulness, right? It's a little bit of it's a slight difference, and we'll get into exactly what that means. But the concept of familiarization is extremely, important to meditation. So we're kind of familiar with we're familiarizing our body with things, right? Like if we were going to train to run a race, I like to use this example a lot. If we're going to train to run a 5K, if I was like, hey guys, guess what? I'm going to run a 5K, and knowing myself and how I'm not very familiar with running, I don't think it would go that well, right? I probably would get around the block and I'd get super tired. I'd go home and then I'd be laid up on the couch. I'm super sore for the next couple of days. That's probably how my first 5K experience would go. But if I were to train my body, right? If I ran maybe 10 minutes each day for like a month or 2 months or whatever, right? Training for my next race. Well, each time I might be able to run a little further. I might be able to recover a little faster, right? I could run faster too, right? We can improve upon our time. And what's happening is that my body is becoming familiar with running, right? It's becoming familiar with what I need to do to run, right? Which it's not very familiar with right now. So our mind works the exact same way. We can train our mind very similar to the way that we train our body. And so what we're training our mind to do is to become familiar with concepts, familiar with certain feelings. Peacefulness, right? That was a great one. Wouldn't it be awesome if our mind was so familiar with being peaceful that we had to kind of try to not make it that way, right? We're kind of on the other end of the spectrum right now. If we think about something like anger, we can get angry like this, having the best day ever, walking down the street, spinning around, sound of music, everything's wonderful. Somebody says something to us, boom, we're angry, right? It happens so fast, right? It's because our mind is super familiar with anger, right? So meditation is all about choosing what we want to familiarize our mind with, right? And then doing it. So hopefully that makes a little sense. I know maybe it seems a little nebulous, but it's sort of like a two-step process, meditation. First, we have to relax our mind, right? Because our mind is normally super busy. Right? And when our mind is really busy or worried or anxious, it doesn't really operate that well, right? We start to get upset about things that normally don't upset us. We start to get worried about things that really maybe aren't that big of a deal, right? So when we're in the throes of this kind of panic mode in our mind, it's hard for us to think clearly, right? To think reasonably. And so that's our first step, is to start to relax our mind a little bit so we can then use that relaxed mind to think clearly about something, to become familiar with something we want to become familiar with. Does that make sense? So an analogy I like to use for this is if we're thinking of a still lake, right? Very, very beautiful, very serene, right? We can see the reflection in the lake. All right. You can probably describe it to me. Well, if it starts to rain, what happens to that reflection? It becomes harder to see, it becomes less clear. If it really starts to downpour, the raindrops are obscuring the reflection on the lake, right? The reflection is still there, it's just obscured. This is a really good analogy for our mind. Our mind is normally like a still lake, very calm, very peaceful, very reasonable, thinking objectively. But the bombardment of thoughts that are going on in our mind each day, all day long, worry about this, think about this, panic about this, right? Get upset about this. All those things that are popping in and out of our head, they're like raindrops. And they're making it hard for us to access our naturally peaceful, calm state, right? So we have to learn to clear away some of these raindrops. And the way we do that is with breathing meditation, right? It's formally called single-pointed concentration, if you want to get all fancy about it. But all we're doing is we're focusing exclusively on one thing, so much so that other things seem to fade into the background. Sort of like if you've ever been in the zone at work, all right? You ever had that experience? Type in, doing your project, got a big presentation coming up, boop, boop, boop. You lose track of time, forget to eat lunch. People are calling you, your name, you don't even hear it, right? Because we're so plugged into something that other things that are normally clamoring for our attention, it's almost as if they disappear, right? So being in the zone is sort of like we're doing this not voluntarily, but we can train to do something similar voluntarily by focusing on our breath, right? The reason we start with our breath as a focal point is mainly because our breath is always with us, right? So we want to get into the habit of realizing that you do not need specific external conditions in order to meditate. You don't need perfect quiet. You don't need to retreat to a mountain. You don't need to leave your friends behind. No, all you need is just a little bit of time for yourself and to be able to focus on your breath, right? You always have your breath with you. So it's very empowering if you can become proficient at using your breath to relax, to clear away some of those raindrops. Does that sound good? Okay. So this is a little overview of meditation, like breathing meditation. And today's class is all about looking at different types of breathing meditation. So we're going to do one right now. So I'd just like to just do this meditation, and then I'll explain a little bit about it and some of the other ones. But I usually like to do 2 meditations, in this hour-long session. And this one's just designed to just kind of clear away some of those raindrops, relax us a little bit. That way we can take in some of the information we're going to learn today as intently as possible, right? We're going to be really plugged into what the information that we're learning about today, because we're not going to be worried about some other things. Sound good? Okay, we're going to do a breathing meditation now. Instructionally, very simple. You're going to sit in a comfortable position. You can be in a chair, you can be on a cushion, you can be laying down, doesn't matter, whatever you want, right? Whatever you want, as long as you're relatively comfortable, right? That's the most important thing. And then you can go ahead and close your eyes, and you're going to follow along with what I'm saying. I'm going to guide us through about a 5-minute breathing meditation, okay? Whenever we start a meditation, the first thing we always do is check in with ourselves. How are you feeling right now? In this moment, are you happy? Are you sad? Are you tired? Are you energetic? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. All that matters is you notice. Begin to notice what your mind is up to. This is called mindfulness. A very common word these days. Mindfulness is all about paying attention to what your mind is up to moment, so you can skillfully respond to those thoughts. So just notice how you're feeling. And having checked in, you can turn your full attention to your breathing in and out of your nose. Very gently, very naturally. You do not need to take big, deep inhales or forcefully exhale the air, or just breathing normally in and out. See if you can follow your entire breath in and your entire breath out. Keep breathing in and out very gently, very naturally, and allow yourself to relax. At some point, you may notice your attention drifts a bit. Maybe your mind is thinking about something that happened earlier in the day, or something that's coming up later. Whenever you notice this, just gently guide your attention back to your breath, back to the present moment of breathing in and out, very gently and naturally. Keep breathing in and out, following each breath to the best of your ability. As we begin to plug into our breath, begin to focus on our breathing single-pointedly, we may start to notice some things about breathing that we hadn't noticed before. Maybe we notice some sensations, how the air feels cool, temperature-wise, as we breathe in, and how the air feels a bit warmer as we breathe out. Or maybe we notice our shoulders rising and falling with each breath, or our chest expanding and contracting with each breath, our entire body being an active participant in breathing. You're beginning to find breathing interesting. You're beginning to find breathing joyful. Finding little joys in something as simple as breathing as you begin to relax. This process of choosing to focus on your breath and bringing your attention back to your breath whenever it drifts is meditation. You are meditating right now. You are training your mind to relax, to be calm, to access its natural, peaceful state. How wonderful. How wonderful that you are able to do this all on your own with just your breath, breathing in and out, very gently, very naturally. So just continue to breathe in and out for a little while longer. Enjoy sitting here. Enjoy breathing. Okay. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Marina, you live in the North Island. I didn't make it to the North Island. I regret it. I should have taken way more time and explored the North Island. But I will go back to New Zealand. Mark my words. How did that go? Hard? Easy? Easier than you thought? Harder than you thought? Like, everyone's going to have a different experience. A lot of people are kind of surprised at how difficult it might be to purposely keep your attention on something because we're used to letting our mind do whatever we want, right? Normally our mind's like, hey, you're going to think about this. And we're like, okay, I'm thinking about this. And then your mind's like, actually, you're going to worry about this. And then like, oh, okay, I'm going to worry about that. Our mind seems like it's in control, right? So part of meditation is regaining control of what we're thinking about, regaining control of our thoughts. And at first, it might seem a little difficult. It seems like people had a good experience. That's great. If you did find it difficult, it really shouldn't be that big of a surprise, right? It's not just like if you're not a runner and you have a hard time running a 5K. If you're not used to meditating, if you're not familiar with meditating, well, then it becomes challenging to do something like this. And all it's going to take is a little practice, right? Janelle, I have never been so calm and head clear. Wow, amazing. And so Janelle, this is really, and everyone who had a really good experience, this is something important to note. Like we didn't do anything like special, you were just breathing. So you're able to relax yourself a little bit, even just a little bit, by focusing on your breath. Wow, that's kind of awesome, right? That's kind of a cool thing. It's a good tool in our tool belt. Marina, nice. I love your explanation of the lake and the raindrops. I'd like to use it in a poem. Do I have permission to use your words? Sure, go right ahead. Yeah. So that analogy I think is really helpful for kind of visualizing what we're trying to accomplish with breathing meditation. Randy, when I checked in at the beginning, I was surprised with how negative I was feeling. And I guess I was doing a good job of ignoring this. However, in just 5 minutes, I felt significantly more positive. Randy, that's awesome on a couple of different levels. So that's a great example of how we'd never check in with ourselves, right? We just let our mind do whatever it wants. And if it's doing negative stuff, okay. And like, I guess that's how it's going, right? So the purpose of checking in the beginning of the meditation is to try to accomplish exactly what you did. Identify, hey, I'm feeling a little sad right now. Or, hey, I'm feeling a little nervous right now, right? And then we don't have to try to fix it or panic about it. We're just checking in. We're just trying to notice what our mind is doing. Because if we can notice what our mind is doing, then we can respond to it, right? Great. Awesome. Breathing meditation may help with panic disorder. Yeah. So I got into meditation for very, very bad anxiety, like panic attacks. And meditation is very wonderful for helping with that. Janelle, if that is something that you are, is a particular kind of pain point of your life, I have done a number of anxiety-based meditation lessons. They're on the YouTube channel, so you can check those out. All my past classes are up on YouTube channel. Cool. Magdalena, this practice has helped during the week. Awesome. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to incorporate meditation into our life so we can start to see some benefits, right? So today, we're going to look at 3 different types of breathing meditation, right? Well, for each one of them, it's going to be focused on using our breath, but we're going to approach it in different ways, right? I am hoping meditation will help me with worry. I am a worrier, yes. So worrying is analogous to anxiety, right? Worrying about the future, anxious about the future, right? Meditation is really good for that. Like I was saying to Janelle, I've done some pretty extensive classes on anxiety. It's one of the most common entry points into meditation. So you can check those out, or we'll get to it again. It comes up a lot. Especially like to teach it because it's something that I still, struggle with, right? But it is very good for that. So last week, this is actually a really interesting segue from last week, because last week we looked at how we can turn some of our routine activities into like a meditation practice, right? Maybe some non-traditional ways of meditating. And by traditional, I mean sitting down, closing your eyes, breathing, right? So we talked about walking meditation. We talked about mindful eating, mindful drinking, right? Basically being plugged into eating that we start to notice some things about eating that we hadn't noticed before. Does that sound familiar? That's like what we just did with our breath, right? Essentially, we were looking last week at how we can use our 5 senses to kind of create some meditative practices, right? So with formal meditation, sitting down, breathing, our eyes closed, right? What we just kind of did. We're sort of using a 6th sense, our mind, right? We're using our mind. It's all happening in our mind, right? And there's great benefit from training in formal meditation. The number one reason is that it proves to yourself that you do not need particular things in order to relax. You have the ability to relax in you, and you can access it just by doing something as simple as sitting and breathing, right? Like mindful walking is great, mindful eating and drinking is great, but you might not always be in a situation where you can walk. You might not always be in a situation where you can eat. You might not always be in a situation where you can drink, right? So if that is the only way that you've learned how to meditate, well, you might run into some issues if that's not available to you. And sometimes we start to feel dependent on those things, right? So this is why it's really good to train in both ways, right? Being creative, like what we talked about last week, you can go check that out. And then also doing some formal meditation, right? Which is what we're doing today. It's all about like a more formal meditation, right? Let me catch up. World is definitely a stressful place right now. Yeah. And, stress seems to find us pretty easily. So this is a really good tool to have, right? Even if we can clear away some of those raindrops just a little bit, right? Hey, you can see the reflection more clearly, right? If we clear away 10% of the raindrops, if we clear away 10% of the stressful thoughts in our mind, anxious thoughts in our mind, well then we can feel a little bit better, right? We don't have to try to go all or nothing right away. We can build up to that, right? Awesome. Okay, so the first type of breathing meditation is kind of, we dabbled into it in the one we just did. It's called sensory breathing meditation. I don't know if that's what it's called. That's what I call it. Sensory breathing meditation, right? And sensory-based breathing meditation is all about feeling. How does it feel to breathe? Right? We kind of touched on that in that meditation, right? So if I were to ask you right now, how do you drive a car? I don't know how to drive a car. Explain to me how to drive a car, right? You'd be like, okay, well, there's a gas pedal, there's a brake, you could step on the gas, do it slightly, otherwise the car's going to go really fast. And then you got the steering wheel, that, like, I don't know, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you could explain to me how to drive from like an intellectual understanding of it, right? What if I were to ask you, what does driving feel like? You might be like, I don't know. I never really thought about that. Never had to put that into words before. It might be hard for you to put it into words, but you know what driving feels like. It's like it might be hard for you to verbalize, but you know it. You've driven enough to know what driving feels like, right? So this is the difference between what is called an intellectual understanding and an experiential understanding of something. So driving is a good example of one that you have both, right? You understand intellectually how driving works, but you also have an experiential understanding of how it feels to drive a car, right? free. Ooh, beautiful. So breathing meditation, sensory-based breathing meditation, is all about trying to achieve this same thing, right? So if I were to ask you right now, how do you breathe? I don't know how to breathe. That would be a problem for me. But like, how do you breathe? You could tell me. Okay, I guess you just go, you suck some air in through your nose, and then you kind of push it out, and that's breathing. It's pretty simple instructions, right? But what if I were to ask you, what does breathing feel like? You might be like, I don't know. I never really thought about that, But breathing, there's a lot of feelings and sensations that are going on, right? Like we talked about, our shoulders rising and falling, our chest expanding, contracting, the air being cool as we breathe in and warmer as we breathe out. These are all things that are part of breathing, sensations that are part of breathing that we can really plug into, right? So sensory-based breathing meditation is all about gaining an experiential understanding of what it feels like to breathe, right? So some of the benefits of this type of breathing meditation is that we start to gain some interest and fascination in the activity that we're doing. So in our case, we're breathing. So we start to gain some interest in breathing, right? Oh, it's interesting how the air is cooler as I breathe in and warmer as I breathe out, right? It's interesting, right? And when we're interested in something, what happens? We tend to want to do it. We tend to want to engage in that activity. We tend to want to explore it further, right? We start to find joy in doing it, and we want to push ourselves to do it. So breathing, sensory-based breathing meditation is really good for like motivating us to find some little joys in breathing. So we want to do it more, right? So I would say sensory-based breathing meditation is probably the most common, and for good reason. But sometimes I've had people tell me, if they're like kind of new to it, that their mind wanders. Like sometimes they're like, hey, our mind, kind of pay attention to the sensations of breathing. Our mind's like, oh, absolutely not. I'm going to think about that thing that's been really bothering me, right? So sometimes if we try to be a little esoteric with it, with like sensory-based breathing meditation, our mind can wander a bit, right? Especially if we're already kind of in the throes of anxiety or something like that, right? So, which leads us to our second method of doing breathing meditation, is what I'll call counting breathing meditation. And so this style of breathing meditation is really good for when our mind is super busy or super anxious or super sad or angry. Like when we have a negative mental state that is really kind of at the forefront of our thoughts, right? Generally, when we're starting meditation, we seem to only do it when we're having a problem, right? And something I like to kind of talk about a lot on this channel is starting to train in meditation when you're feeling good, right? Because sometimes when we're feeling bad, right, it can be hard for us to want to settle in, right? Our mind is just already so far down the path of anxiety or sadness or anger, right? And we'll get to be able to use meditation to help with that, but it's also good to train in meditation when you're feeling good, right? Because it removes a layer of difficulty, right? So, Captain Oz, what's up, dude? It has been a long time. Good to see you, my friend. So counting breathing meditation, right? We're basically giving our mind a job. We're saying, okay, mind, you have a very specific job. Your job is to count breaths, right? So we breathe in and out, and then we say in our head, 1. Breathe in and out, 2. Okay? And we see how high we can count before we notice that our attention has drifted and we've lost count or we forgot what we're doing or we can't remember what number we're on. And then as soon as we notice that we're like, what number was I? We immediately start back at 1, right? So this is really helpful for anxiety, panic. I know somebody was talking about using meditation for like panic attacks, right? So counting meditation is really good for anxiety and catastrophizing. Do you know what that word is? Catastrophizing? It's when we like go down the rabbit hole of all of the bad things that could and will happen because of this thing that we're worried about, right? So sometimes that pull is really strong, and giving our mind a job, a clear job that we're familiar with, counting, can be super helpful in allowing us to relax a little bit, to clear away some of those raindrops. Right? So that's just another tool in your tool belt of meditation. And you might be like, man, counting meditation really works for me. That's awesome, right? Great, stick with that. You might be like, the sensory thing is really working for me. Cool, stick with that. These are just different. Everyone's a different learner, right? We all have different learning styles, and there's a lot of different ways we can meditate. So that's kind of the goal of today, is to throw some out there and see which stick for you. I do that every day. I've had arguments with people that they never knew we had. Ooh, deep. I love it. Yeah, catastrophizing is a really common thing. It's pretty much analogous to anxiety, and even anger, right? So like when we're catastrophizing, right? Our mind is not present. Our mind is in the past or in the future, right? We're either worried about something that's coming up, or we're dwelling on something in the past, right? So part of meditation is bringing our mind back to the present. Presently, we're counting our breaths, right? Mind, I know you want to drift off into the past, but no. Right now, we're counting, right? So it's all about training our mind to be in the present moment. Very good. Magdalena, I can use a rosary to count it. Yes, some people do use like a tactile thing to count breaths. You can do that. Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. The rabbit hole is really hard to climb out of sometimes. Yes. So Janelle, we talk a lot about this on this channel, the idea of like how negative mind states are like a forest fire. So forest fire, if it starts with one flame. So if we happen to be there with a bucket of water and we see, hey, there's the flame, we toss it on that and the forest is saved. No fire, right? If we are not there to see the flame spark in the forest fire, what happens? It spreads and it becomes harder to manage. The same is true for our mind, which is why we want to check in with ourselves, why we want to pay attention to what our mind is doing so we can catch our catastrophizing earlier on, right? Because it's easier to manage if we catch it when it's just a little flame. Hopefully that's helpful. Hilda, when we have anxiety attacks and cannot find anything to help us on the spot, we need to practice meditation beforehand, like you said. Yeah, so again, it can be difficult to settle into meditation when you're like in super panic mode. I know, I've been there. I'm still there, So it's really important to train in meditation even when you're not feeling bad. That way, when you do have those moments where you're feeling panicked, you're going to be able to rely on meditation more because it's more familiar to your mind, right? You're going to be like, you know what? I was able to do this. Good. Okay. Janelle, that was helpful. Okay. I'm glad. So, the third type of breathing meditation that we're going to talk about today is imagery-based breathing meditation, right? So if sensory, feeling, right? That was the first one we talked about. That's great for finding joy and interest in something. Right? So finding joy and interest in our breath so that we want to do breathing meditation. It's fascinating. It makes us feel joyful, right? Counting, great for a busy mind. Counting meditation is great if our mind is super busy one day or panicked, having some anxiety, right? Maybe we can't really kind of hone in on some of the sensory things that are coming up when we're breathing. Counting, giving our mind a job, really important. And then the third is imagery. Imagery-based breathing meditation is great for exploration, right? Using our mind to explore different concepts, different scenarios that we can then apply to some of the problems that we might be having, right? Yes, best to catch it whilst a small flame before it gets out of control. Yeah, exactly. That's the concept, right? And catching it is all about mindfulness. Very buzzwordy word, but all mindfulness means is an active moment-to-moment awareness of your thoughts for the purpose of catching the fire early, right? Because then it becomes more manageable, right? Okay, so imagery-based breathing meditation. If I were to ask you right now, how long would it take you to go to the moon? What would you say? I bet you somebody knows. I actually don't know. And forget the problem, the giant hurdle that you do not have a rocket ship to go to the moon. Pretend you have all that. How long would it take you? It takes a little while. Yeah. If I were to ask you, imagine being on the moon. How long does it take you to do that? Instantaneously, right? You can go to the moon in your mind in 0.00000000001 second. So even though you've never been to the moon, unless you have, I don't know. See, I knew Captain Oz would know. 2 weeks and 10 hours. So, even though you've never been to the moon, unless you have, in which case that's amazing, you can like totally imagine yourself on the moon instantaneously, just using your imagination, right? Like dreaming. Dreaming is super interesting. When you are dreaming, okay, what's happening? Your body is literally on a bed, all right? You're just, or I don't know if you're at a couch or something. Like your body is motionless. It's still like on your bed, but your mind is in like a far off land, right? It's completely crafted a vivid scenario of something, right? You ever have the experience of when you're dreaming, like it's like you're in like a house, but it's not your house. You've never been in this house, but you like, I mean, you know the colors of the wall, like you're there. Right? It's like your mind has created this very vivid picture, right? The mind is super, super good at crafting situations, sometimes for better or for worse, right? But we can use this to our advantage. We can use our imagination to craft visualizations, to craft scenarios that we then analyze, right? We then look at from a different perspective, right? So basically, we can use our imagination, our mind, to find answers to things, to like non-imaginary questions, right? We're finding actual answers to actual questions, right? Just by using our mind's ability to create vivid scenes, right? So on this channel, we talk a lot about this method of, I guess the cliche way of saying it is putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? But like, essentially, we talk about if you're having anxiety or you're upset about something, a good method is sometimes think about your best friend having this exact same problem and what advice would you give them? Because usually our advice is way more reasonable for them than for ourselves. So this is basically an exercise in image-based meditation, right? We are fully immersing ourselves, creating the scenario in our mind that our friend is having this thing, this anxiety about something, this worry, right? And then we are there helping them, right? And what do we say, right? What do we say? So this is, I mean, in reality, it's our problem, right? But we're using our mind to shift our perspective. And it helps us explore some different realizations we can come to, right? We look at things from different angles. We might start to gain some interesting insight about things that are bothering us. This is what imagery-based breathing meditation is all about. And we do a lot of it here. The mountain meditation, that's a pretty common one. Even if this is your first time here, you might have done that before. The mountain meditation is using an image, right, of the mountain, and we're gaining some insight into like what that means, right, about us, right? So we do a lot of different imagery-based breathing meditation on this channel, and it's a really good way of exploring. That's how I like to define imagery-based breathing meditation. So sensory-based, great for finding interest and joy in something. Counting, great for a mind that is super busy and doesn't want to obey. Right? Imagery-based, exploring issues you might be having, exploring different perspectives about things. Does that kind of make sense? So these are just 3 different things you can play with, right? And we're going to do a meditation right now, and I'm going to kind of combine counting and imagery. That way we have kind of touched on all 3. You get a little taste of each one. But some people really identify with imagery-based meditation. Some people really identify with sensory-based meditation. Some people really identify with counting. It doesn't matter. Whichever one connects with you is what you should stick with, at least for the time being. And then you can kind of branch out a little bit, because they're all getting at the same thing. They're all teaching you to make a choice to focus on one thing, right? So in sensory, we're focusing on the sensations of breathing. In counting, we're focusing on counting our breaths. In imagery, we're focusing on an image that we're creating in our mind. It's all the same thing. We're focusing on one thing, noticing when our mind has drifted, and bringing it back to focusing on that one thing. That is meditation. That is literally the definition of meditation, right? Meditation isn't about not thinking about anything. It's the opposite, right? We're choosing what we're thinking about, and then we're noticing when our mind isn't thinking about it and being able to bring it back. That's meditation. Cool? Okay. Any questions on any of that? I know it's a lot of information. So I want to do another quick breathing meditation. And like I said, I'm going to try to combine counting and some imagery. I had somebody said they really liked the meditation we did a couple weeks ago about the wood in the ocean, the piece of wood in the ocean. So I think maybe we'll use that for our imagery one. But we're going to start the same way. So you can just go ahead and sit comfortably. If you were not happy with your chair selection last time around, this is a good opportunity to make some adjustments for comfort. Really great, really great questions and comments today. Thank you. Love it. Okay, so sit comfortably, relaxed, close your eyes, and just follow along with what I'm saying. We're going to do we're going to do a counting meditation to relax ourselves, and then we're going to do an imagery-based breathing meditation, right? Probably be about 7 minutes, something like that, I hope. All right, go ahead and close your eyes. Let's check in with ourselves. How are you feeling now? Different than before? The same? Whatever it is, just notice. We now know why we're doing this, why we're practicing checking in with ourselves. We're doing it so we can catch negative mental states early on, making it easier for us to manage them. So we're just noticing how we're feeling in this moment right now. And having done that, you can turn your attention once again to your breathing. In and out of your nose very gently and naturally, just like before. Breathing in and out, and allowing yourself to relax. Sometimes, if our mind is extremely busy, it can be helpful to give our mind a very specific job, such as counting your breaths. So I'd like you to breathe in and out, and then in your head say 1. In and out 2. See how high up you can count. What number can you reach? And if you ever lose track, notice that your attention has drifted away from counting. Just bring it back and start again at 1. In and out. Very gently, very natural breathing. Check in with yourself. Have you lost count? Are you thinking about something other than counting? If so, just gently guide your attention back to breathing in and out. 1. In and out. 2. Allow yourself to settle in to your chair or your cushion. Allow yourself to enjoy sitting here, breathing. So counting meditation is a really useful tool for calming a busy mind. And with our mind being a little bit more calm, we can start to go on a journey. We can start to go on a little bit of an imaginary adventure. We can use our mind's amazing ability to craft visualizations, to learn some things about ourselves. This is called Imagery Meditation. So I'd like you to imagine right now a piece of wood floating in the ocean. Just the ocean, and just this piece of wood floating effortlessly on top of it. Just imagine it. Really put yourself there. The current of the ocean pushes the piece of wood in one direction. Sometimes the waves, they are very mild and gentle, and the wood is just gently bobbing up and down on them, but still moving effortlessly in a direction. Other times, the waves might be a bit more violent and might toss the piece of wood around a little bit. But the piece of wood always recovers. And as the piece of wood allows the ocean to move it, you can start to see the shoreline, its destination. Each wave, whether it be small and gentle or large, stormy, they are pushing the piece of wood towards the shoreline, towards its home, towards its destination, its goal. We can learn to be like this piece of wood. We can learn to weather some of the good and the bad that happens to us in our life, allowing both the good and the bad to push us towards becoming what we want to be, push it towards our goal of who do we want to be, what kind of person do we want to be. Both gentle and violent waves are equally water. We can embrace this. So just for a little while, imagine that you are this piece of wood. And you're resilient enough to manage both gentle and strong waves and let each of them push you towards the shoreline, push you towards becoming the person you want to be. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. You can return to your human form. Janelle, I've learned more from you than my therapist. Well, meditation is kind of like a self-therapy, right? It's something that's really interesting about our mind. Like a lot of these answers that we're looking for, they're in us, right? Right? We just have to kind of look at them from different angles, which is why we're looking at different ways of meditating, right? That's a pretty good segue there. So we started with counting meditation, right? So we were counting our breaths in and out 1, in and out 2. And then when we noticed that we lost count or we're thinking about something else, we're starting over, right? Really good for giving our mind a job, great for a busy mind. And then we went into this kind of image of this piece of wood floating in the ocean. And the takeaway, the realization that we're trying to come to with this particular image-based meditation is that the external conditions are sometimes going to not be ideal. Sometimes they're going to be ideal, sometimes they're not going to be ideal, right? But each of those we can learn from. We can have each of those good and bad conditions push us to growing, to becoming something that we want to be, right? Just like the piece of wood kind of allows the ocean to move it, right? Print and play. Was I supposed to keep counting while envisioning the wood? Because I did, but wasn't sure if I should. Great question, and I should have explained this. So like normally, no, because they're kind of two separate things. I just wanted to make sure that you got some experience in the different kinds of breathing meditations we can do. But normally I would just pick one. So like if you were connecting with the counting thing, stick with that. All right. If the image thing was like, that was really cool, I had a really good experience, like we can kind of just do some normal breathing and then dive right into the image. Great question. Thank you. Sorry if that was confusing. I realize now that I should have explained that better. Hilda, that was great. How the waves can be things in life and happen to us, the positive and negative experiences. Yeah. So like, and like, if we really try, it's like we can be in the ocean. Like our mind takes us there, and we can really feel what it's like to be that piece of wood, allowing the ocean to carry us to the different methods, to our goal, to the different things that we want to do. So we're just using our imagination. We're just using our mind to create this very vivid image that we then can extrapolate some lesson from. I was counting and bringing the number in and pushing it out with the next one. And that one that's really cool. So yeah, Magdalena, that's a really cool way of doing counting meditation. So like you're breathing like one number in and then like pushing it out. It doesn't matter. Whatever connects with you. Captain Oz, for me, I found it hard to concentrate on the number one. You're not alone. I actually struggle with that too sometimes. And this just goes back to everybody being a different type of learner, right? You know, some people are visual learners, some people are auditory, or, you know, whatever those things are, right? And so everyone's a different meditator, right? So Oz, you might really connect with like the sensory based meditation, right? It's just having a different tool in your tool belt, right? But totally a normal thing to gravitate towards one or the other. I too sometimes struggle with the counting meditation. So really, really good point. Experiment with some of the other ones, right? Cool. My mind drifts off quickly. Well, I mean, all of our minds do. That's kind of why we're here. And the reason that our minds drift off quickly is because we have been allowing them to do whatever they want for our entire life. Right? And so what happens? Our mind, talk about familiarity, our mind is familiar with thinking about a million things at once, multitasking, right? Drifting, right? Our mind is not used to being focused on one thing, right? You can see yourself doing the visual one more so. Yeah, a lot of people really connect with the visual one. Another good visual meditation, it's a little more simple, is you can imagine your every time you exhale, you're breathing out like dark smoke, right? And that's like all of your anxiety and worries. Like, so it's like you're just bringing this image to mind, breathing out like dark smoke, and then breathing in like white smoke or white light as you breathe in. And that's like warmth and happiness. So this is using like imagery to really kind of dive into your breath more. So that's another imagery based breathing meditation that you can use. It's called a black and white meditation or dark and light meditation. It's good. Yeah. Carol Ann, love them all. Great. That's what I like to hear. All right. So that's enough for today. I hope you had some fun and this was interesting or relaxing or thought provoking or one and all or all of those things. If you did have a good time, come on back. We do something new each week. I usually don't know what I'm going to do until late in the week because it's just how I am. But we always try to mix it up and explore some different things we can do with meditation, right? And if you are so inclined, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's really helpful for me. Lets YouTube know that people are interested in this, helps me with like search results, and it helps you because you're reminded on Wednesdays when I'm going live, because we all have very busy lives, and I'm sure that you're going to forget occasionally. So it's a nice like win-win for both of us. And if you're like, hey, this is really interesting. I'm totally into this. I do one-on-one instruction over Zoom. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I'm going to put my email in the chat now. It's Keith@meditationbreaks. Keith, hold on, I got to concentrate. Breaks.com. Just email me and we'll find a time that'll be good for you, and we can really focus on a topic. So like some people were saying, hey, I want to use meditation to help with my panic attacks. Well, we can totally plug right into that, right? That's the beauty of one-on-one instruction. So if that's interesting to you, cool. Let me know. All right, let me catch up. Marina, you're a great teacher. Thank you. That really means a lot to me. I appreciate that. I'm glad you had a good time. Carol, thank you so much. Glad you're here. Hilda, thank you. It's so nice to see all the returning faces and the newcomers. It's great. Janelle, I'm glad that you had a good time here today. I'm glad that you learned some stuff, and hopefully you can start to build a little bit of a meditation routine. Just start slow, 5 minutes or less. Don't do anything crazy. Don't meditate for an hour. All right. It's going to be daunting. You're going to be like, oh, I don't want to meditate. It's going to be an hour. No, just do it for like a minute or so, right? Consistency is the key, right? Captain Al, it's awesome, dude. Great to see you again. Thanks for the insight. It's awesome seeing you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you. Print play. Print play's got my back here, hitting the like button. Joe, I'm glad that you had a good, relaxing experience. Yeah, meditation is a wonderful way to just kind of de-stress a little bit. And it gets easier the more that you do it. Everyone's been so kind. All of the thoughtful comments and questions today, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. I couldn't do this without you guys taking time into your day to be here, and I love teaching. So thank you. I have gratitude for you. Jay Probert nodded off. It's okay. If you nod off while meditating, it's not the end of the world. At least you're getting a couple winks in, right? All right. Everyone have a great week. Enjoy meditating. Have some fun with it. And I'll see you guys next Wednesday. We'll talk about something new. Okay? All right. Take care.